Hello, it's Cried here, with an optimized build for Rellana's Twin Blades. This is a weapon you can get fairly early on into the DLC, and it also belongs to one of the new weapon types, a light greatsword. Don't worry, other than this weapon, this video will have no spoilers. As Rellana's Twin Blades is one of the few Int-Fate hybrid weapons, and has a fun, unique, and flexible weapon art, this larger cousin of the Sword of Night and Flame will undoubtedly receive a lot of attention. This is probably why I've already gotten plenty of questions on how to optimize this weapon. First up, let's learn a bit more about this weapon. Rellana's Twin Blades is a paired weapon, which means that when you two-hand the weapon, you will be holding it in both hands, rather than getting the 1.5 times strength multiplier. What is special about these twin blades is that it doesn't have the ability to guard like the other paired weapons. Instead, it has another attack moveset in place of the guard, making it a very aggressive weapon choice. Its weapon art, Moon and Fire Stance, puts you into a stance where you can then choose to fire off sword waves with your light attack, or to engulf the area around you with fire if you do the heavy attack. The sword waves from the light attack weapon art scales to intelligence, while the flames from the heavy weapon art scales to faith. With the introduction out of the way, let's talk about stat distribution and how you should build your character. The attack rating of the weapon itself actually scales to strength and dexterity better than intelligence or faith. This part has caused plenty of issues, as many people have asked me about a more popular YouTuber's Rellana Twin Blades build, where he invests into strength and dexterity. But I don't recommend this at all, as you will be losing out too much weapon art damage, which is quite integral to the weapon. Let's see how you can build a better build on all fronts. Taking a look at the attack rating difference of investing into strength and dexterity versus intelligence and faith, we see that you end up with roughly 9% higher AR on the strength and dexterity version. However, without doing the complicated math, let's take a look at the weapon art damage difference. Using the strength and dexterity version, we are only sitting at 1660 damage with the intelligence weapon art. On the other hand, if we go for the intelligence and faith investment, we have a much higher 2173 damage. This ends up being a whole 31% damage difference. Yes, you can also land the blade portion of your weapon while using the weapon art, but you already saw the attack rating damage difference. It isn't nearly as high, and the melee hit is also very inconsistent, as sometimes it'll just phase through the enemy and it doesn't have as good of a range either. So this becomes my recommended stat distribution with my level 150 build. You can feel free to drop more points in intelligence and faith if you prefer to have a bit more endurance for the maximum stamina, or even mind if you like spamming the weapon art. Vagabond is the most optimal class, as we get additional points in strength and dexterity. Also, I set the minimum dexterity to 11 points, because we just need 16 for Rellana's, and we're going to be running the Millicent's prosthesis, which gives us 5 dexterity. Because the heavy attack flame weapon art is so close ranged, if you don't like using it much, here is an alternative stat distribution which gives you a bit more HP, magic damage, and 2% more raw attack. By the way, it is not a mistake that we are going for 55 intelligence, as the magic and faith soft cap for Rellana's Twin Blades doesn't actually follow the 50-point soft cap curve. This is the full stat distribution for the sword wave only build. Remember, the dexterity is 5 points lower here because we're still running the Millicent's prosthesis, which will even the dexterity out with strength. Talking about talismans, this is where we easily make up for the damage of investing into intelligence and faith, so we still have a good base damage from our light and heavy attacks. Because the moveset of Rellana's is very rapid, we are able to easily stack the consecutive attacks for these talismans, which is indicated by the red aura around us. This is a far better way to buff your overall damage than investing into strength and dexterity and then trying to use the Shard of Alexander to make up for shoddy weapon art damage. Your light jumping attack is particularly good at getting many hits out in as short of a time frame as possible. You might not have access to both Millicent's and Rotten Wing Talisman if you don't enter NG Plus though, so if you want another offensive option, you can swap Rotten Wing Sword Insignia to the normal version or Shard of Alexander. The two-headed turtle talisman that increases your stamina regeneration by 10 per second is also a good option, as you do burn through quite a bit of stamina. Otherwise, I recommend Crimson Amber Medallion plus 3, which grants you 10% more maximum HP. Any previous version works as well before you get this in the DLC. The additional max HP forms a good combo with our next talisman that scales its healing according to our max HP. The Godskin Swaddling Cloth actually provides a fair bit of sustain in a build that attacks this fast. It works very well with the Rellana's Twin Blades because this is a very offensive weapon where you even give up the ability to guard for a different attacking moveset. You absolutely want to stay on the offensive, and combined with other parts of this build, it makes you quite tanky. If you're not super comfortable or prefer a more defensive playstyle, I suggest the Crimson Sea Talisman, or its upgraded version if you find it in the DLC. One trick with the Godskin Swaddling Cloth is that the Rellana's heavy attacks require fewer consecutive hits for the heal. The heavy attack chain of the Rellana does a wide cleave, which can easily hit multiple targets as well. The heavy attack chain provides less DPS, but can more easily heal you with the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. And finally, we're closing Talismans off with one of the best PvE talismans, the Dragon Crest Grey Shield, which greatly reduces our damage taken from physical attacks. This is great in combination with our Incantations. Yes, since we have quite a bit of faith, we can easily run both the Golden Vow and a Greater Barrier of our choosing. Since Black Flame's protection is far weaker than the elemental barriers, Dragon Crest works perfectly to cover physical negation, because we want to run an elemental barrier anyway. Just run the right one for the right fight. With an additional negation, you can easily live through 2 or 3 shots even in the DLC, while still wearing Rellana's armor set. This armor set is honestly just used for the fashion, because come on, this has to be one of the best looking armor sets in Elden Ring, and it happens to meet the 51 poise breakpoint for PvE. Next, what is our best catalyst? If you want to cast other incantations to deal damage at a range, feel free to use the Golden Order Seal, which has the highest incantation scaling here. It doesn't matter much for me, because when I'm running this build, I'm using the weapon for my damage, and only use incantations for buffs. But if you want to access the faith buffs while using sorcery to cover for long-range attacks, Staff of Great Beyond from the DLC is a staff that can cast both sorceries and incantations. I use it for casting Swift Glintstone Shard for a surprise poke in PvP, so I have this staff slotted instead of the seal. Other than the staff, you are also able to pick another weapon for a bonus passive. As Rellana's Twin Blades is a paired weapon, whatever you are holding on your other hand before you two-hand the Twin Blade will still count as being held. The Great Turtle Shell gives 3 stamina regeneration per second as a bonus, or if you can't stand how ugly you look with the shell, you can choose the Serpent God's Curved Sword for HP on an enemy death, or the Sacrificial Axe for FP on an enemy death. These options are all fairly light on weight and very practical. To close off this build, I recommend the Opaline Heart tier to make you even tankier. This combines really well with your defensive buffs and Godskin Swaddling Cloth. Aside from this tier, the other one is a flex slot of your choice. I don't really suggest the Magic or Flame Shrouded Crack tier, as you have so many damage types. This is unless you're very reliant on the Intelligence Weapon Art for a ranged attack. If that is your style, feel free to combine the Magic Crack tier with the Shard of Alexander. I personally prefer being aggressive with the weapons-based moveset, while finding an opportunity to use the weapon arts though, so I run the Green Burst Crystal tier. This gives you 15 stamina recovery speed per second for 3 minutes, which is a lot more than the turtle shell or even the two-headed turtle talisman, and you don't even need the ugly shell on your back. And that's how you optimize for Rellana's twin blades. Like and subscribe for more optimized builds or weapon breakdowns that'll give you an easier time in the DLC. If you want to support my work, please consider buying my fantasy novel or donating to my Patreon down below. With a book purchase, you can also request a topic from me. Krite, signing out.